You'll recall yesterday I brought up a federal court decision that is allowing Alabama to begin enforcement of its law to protect minors from gender mutilation and other experimental procedures. Well, the state of Missouri passed a similar bill back in June that has since been challenged by the usual LGBT interest groups, as well as some doctors who are looking to preserve this monstrous moneymaker, quite frankly. But the trial started yesterday. It's expected to go at least through tomorrow. And joining me now to provide an update is Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. Attorney General Bailey, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, listen, we love having you on. Let's just jump right into this. Give us an update on the trial so far.
Yeah, well, like you said, the ACLU and Lambda Legal have challenged us here in Missouri. Our General Assembly enacted a provision that would protect children from this sterilization machine that has created so many victims in so many other places. It's a machine that has been rejected by European nations that are far to the left of America culturally, because at least these European nations have recognized there's no healthcare, no science, no medicine to back up the safety or effectiveness of these procedures. And it was creating long-term serious negative health consequences for children. And we're all about protecting children here in the state of Missouri. Proud to live in a state where the General Assembly's enacted that statute. And, at the end of the day, when the General Assembly passes a bill and the governor signs it into law, that's two branches of government signing off as to the constitutionality of that measure. And Lambda Legal and the ACLU disagree with that. And so they've raised an equal protection clause challenge. They filed suit and have asked the judge for preliminary injunction. That law is set to go into effect next Monday on August 28th. We raced into court and put together an excellent trial strategy based on lessons learned from other states and have been putting on evidence to justify a compelling interest in the state of Missouri to protect children from this form of sterilization.
Well, I understand you had some of the leftist activists actually have some pretty significant admissions in the court. What is that? What happened?
Yeah, well, the plaintiffs have the burden of proof to justify that they're likely to succeed on the merits by proving that this bill would violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Missouri Constitution. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. And it was important for us to have a live hearing with real witnesses and evidence and testimony, because I want to put their people under oath and make them own the lies. And we did that effectively through cross-examination. They took to the stand and talked about the studies that they feel justify these sterilization procedures, the administration of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, and ultimately irreversible surgeries that harm children. And we made them own the fact. We made them testify to the fact that it was based on weak science. We made them own the fact that they had not looked at the European studies that have rejected these kinds of procedures. And we made them own the fact that there are zero FDA approvals for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, or zero clinical assessments to establish the safety or effectiveness in these treatments for treating gender dysphoria. And I think it's important to point out, too, that the studies they're relying on and justifying this pseudoscience, in each of those studies where they're saying that these procedures are safe or effective, there was also psychological or psychiatric treatment going on for the patient. So there's a real problem between causation and correlation here, and they couldn't justify it. And then on the other side, when we're putting on our evidence, not only did we have experts opining that there are no studies to back up this pseudoscience to say it's safe or effective, but we also had detransitioners, victims of this sterilization system, victims that came to court and with tears in their eyes testified how devastating and this has been to their lives, and how they're serving life sentences for bad decisions that adults made when those adults were charged with protecting them. And that justifies Missouri's compelling interest in this law. But it's important to get that out in open court and shine the light of truth on this issue.
Man, you're not kidding. That's a brilliant strategy. And to make them own their own false beliefs and pseudoscience as it is, I think that's a powerful way to go. I brought this up in this segment because I'm curious your thoughts on the decision that we talked about yesterday in Alabama, the law and the federal courts that have upheld that law to protect children. Is there any way do you think that influences your own trial?
Absolutely. This is a developing legal issue. Obviously, having the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals say that the state of Alabama has a compelling interest in protecting children from this sterilization machine, that is a compelling legal precedent that should be applied at the trial court here in Missouri. The plaintiffs in this instance have raised state law claims under the Missouri Constitution. But what they failed to recognize is that the Equal Protection Clause of the Missouri Constitution is coexistent with and analyzed in the same manner as the United States Constitution Equal Protection Clause. And I would also point out that Equal Protection Clause jurisprudence for the past 100 years has been based on immutable characteristics. It is unconstitutional to discriminate based on people based on immutable characteristics, and yet the plaintiffs here submit that gender is mutable. So their entire legal argument falls on its face. We have recent groundbreaking precedent that just came out this week that we believe will be persuasive, and ultimately we will succeed on the merits of our claim and defend this statute in order to protect children here in the state of Missouri.
It's just unbelievable that they keep defending the mutilation of these children. That is just beyond me. In fact, they're arguing for off-label use of these drugs. You wonder how can they even make these kind of arguments?
It's shameful. It's disgusting. How dare anyone tell these children that God put them in the wrong body? We know God doesn't make mistakes. And you know what? History's not going to look kindly on this in the same way that we look back at the 40s and 50s and how psychiatric patients were given lobotomies. And at the time, that was quote unquote leading science to cut parts of people's brains out who were suffering from mental health disorders. We look at that as an abomination now. History's going to judge this issue the same way. It's wrong. It was wrong then. It's wrong now. There's a generation of children who've been victimized by this, and we're going to put a stop to it.
Thank you so much. All right, less than a minute left. What's ahead for this? What's going to be your next move going forward?
Well, the judge is on a tight timeline here. The law is set to go into effect on August 28th. That's next week. So the judge is going to have to issue his order as to whether or not to issue an injunction against the law being implemented. We've asked the judge that if he's going to issue an injunction, to make that injunction permanent so we can go straight to the Missouri Supreme Court and get clarity on the constitutionality of this issue. The plaintiffs have objected. They don't want a permanent injunction. They're using procedural chicanery to try to gum up the works. And so, again, we're going to hold them accountable.
Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, I just want to tell you straight up, you have become a hero to many of our viewers and listeners and many here at FRC. Thank you for your courageous stance, your ability to articulate the argument and stand in the gap. The battles you're engaged in are enormous for our country and our next generation. Thank you for joining us on Washington Watch this evening.
Thank you, sir.